Good morning to you all. I've been asked to give a quick welcome and a scene setting for 10 minutes or so, so I'm kind of Ravi's warm-up act, if you will. We're all here to discuss missions in action. That is to say, not the political rhetoric that surrounds missions, but missions in the real world. How do we design and deliver missions that resonate for our fellow citizens? Because there's so much ambiguity and oftentimes fads and fashions attached to the mission discussion, I just wanted to say how we've tried to understand missions from a practical, pragmatic point of view in our own work in Cardiff University, working with our partners in Cardiff Capital Region. I mean, we see them as initiatives which are cross-sectoral collaborations. They invariably involve a very prominent role for government and the wider public sector. They tend always to be addressing societal challenges, as we refer to them, and a practical illustration of societal challenges are probably the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which resonate all around the world. They're not just for poor countries, they're for all countries because they're so important. And they're initiatives which we hope generate economic value as well as social value. And we've tried to put these into practice in our own way in Cardiff Capital Region by developing what we call micro-missions, small place-based missions which address societal challenges at the regional level. And you'll hear more about this from my colleagues when they talk about the Challenge Fund and a programme Owen will talk about Infuse. But before I go any further, it would be remiss and naive of us not to recognise the new headwinds that we're all facing in our different countries, in the UK, in Europe, but above all, in the extraordinary things going on in the US right now, which are the best illustrations of these new headwinds. Let me just mention two, because they bear on the very, very purpose of us when we're thinking about designing and delivering missions. The first is what we might call denialism. The denial of robust evidence. In other words, the gap that's emerging between, let's call it the scientific evidence and the political reaction. The gap between research, evidence, and action. We see it most in the climate field. If you're following what's going on in the United States today, where any reference to climate change is being taken down off official government websites, being taken off government websites, and that's part of a wider backlash, what's called the green backlash against environmental policies, for example. So that denialism is most acute there, and is coming strongly from this headwind blowing in particularly from the US. And the second headwind is an emerging, what I think is a kind of anti-statism. And we see this with the sacking, literally the sacking of public servants in the United States who are being othered. And that's not too strong a word. Public servants in the United States today and elsewhere in the world are being othered as bureaucrats, faceless bureaucrats of the deep state. So it's hard to convey this new context that's emerging. And if you wanted an image of it, I can't think of a better image than the BBC's image this morning, where you see someone like Elon Musk taking a chainsaw to the bureaucracy. It's an extraordinary image, and I urge you to look at it on the BBC, a top story this morning, Musk taking a chainsaw to public servants and sacking them summarily. So it would be naive of us not to realise that these headwinds about evidence and the role of the public sector in our work is not under threat in a way that we've never seen before, because robust evidence on the one hand and public service innovation, public sector innovation, lie at the very heart of what we're talking about here, about missions. They involve public servants innovating in new ways, working in concert with their partners in the private sector and the civic sector. That cross-sector collaboration that I spoke about in a moment. So we'll hear a lot about missions in action, when we colleagues will talk about the Challenge Fund that we've been operating in Cardiff Capital Region, Cardiff University working in concert with CCR. And we'll hear a lot about it, the Challenge Fund's sister programme, what we called Infuse, which my colleague Owen will talk more about. Basically, Infuse was focusing on raising the skill sets, the capacity, capability, and indeed the confidence of public service personnel to think about how to deal with novelty, working in new ways to try to find joint solutions to common problems. That's the Infuse programme, which is a sister programme building capacity for challenge funds. And we'll hear more about the more granular details of that in a moment. Before I finish, let me just, it would again be remiss of me not to mention some disappointments. You know, these are radically new ways of working, so we shouldn't be too judgmental if we are seeming to fail in many ways. Personal disappointments for me was our failure to date to launch a decent challenge fund in the sphere of adult social care. When you think of how that looms in local authority budgets, you know, it's in absolute terms, it's the biggest budget, isn't it? Even though one of the fastest growing budgets is the budget for looked after children and related services. So the failure for us to do something in adult social care, and by damn, we give it a good try. We worked with them on a marvellous bid with our colleagues, Compass, but we couldn't get it over the line. And in my own little field, my own little niche, we failed to deliver to date a challenge in public food systems, particularly in the field of universal free school meals. As you may know, Wales is currently absolutely unique in the United Kingdom as the only nation in the UK to date who's rolled out universal free school meals to all state-funded primary schools. You'll remember Scotland have done something similar, but they haven't rolled it out to P6 or P7, the final 2 years of school. London boroughs are following suit. So London, Scotland and Wales are pioneering, I think, one of the great social innovations that we see today, designing stigma-free, universal free school meals. The challenge now is to raise the quality of that food and to overcome the dreadful disparities in take-up of free meals. And the anecdotal evidence suggests that take-up levels are lowest in the areas of highest need, showing that need alone isn't the challenge, but it's the culture of eating and consuming around free school meals. So these are big challenges. You know, there's an economic dimension, of course, but there's a strong cultural dimension, and above all, there's an issue about how do we engage with citizens, which is one of the big challenges for us all when we think about our city deals, for example, what we might call the civic deficit, because citizens haven't been brought along with businesses and public sector personnel. And then finally, before I finish, the other disappointment, of course, is what we might call the big disconnect, that Challenge Fund and Infuse, or missions, they make big asks, they make big demands on the public sector. So at a time when the public sector is got the lowest capacity and capability ever in my working life, denuded of capacity by over 10 years of austerity, at that very time we have been asked it to step up for these challenges of Challenge Fund, missions, Infuse, and that creates a big disconnect. And in our own work, and my colleague Rick will talk about this later, we often found that the public servants that we were working with knew full well the problems that they faced, but they, for various reasons, they were unable to translate those problems into eligible challenges that met the criteria laid out for Challenge Fund money. But there's enough doom and gloom in the world without us adding to it. So I'm not going to go on any further along that line, because we're here today to talk about the opportunities and the challenges facing us all as we design and deliver missions. And we want a frank discussion about what works, what doesn't work, and we share that experience to try to craft joint solutions to common problems.